Welcome to Where Passion Meets Purpose. I'm your host, Jen Mentasana. On this show, we help busy moms and entrepreneurs find more passion and purpose in their daily lives through inspiring stories and interviews. Welcome back, everyone, to Where Passion Meets Purpose. I am so excited about my next guest. You guys are absolutely going to love her. She comes with a wealth of information for all of us ladies in our 30s, even 40s and 50s, and I just can't wait to share all that she is going to speak about today. First off, let me just say that Corry Matthews is a good friend. I've been working with her here in our community for the past, 4 or 5 years. She's an unbelievable entrepreneur, community member, donates her time, but she's here today to talk about her business, Strength and Grace Fitness, as well as her bodybuilding career. She owned nutrition stores, and she also puts on bodybuilding shows on the East Coast. And she does all of this while raising 2 girls and living here in our community of Palos Verdes, volunteering. But most importantly, today, she has turned all of that experience into a career as a health and fitness coach, as well as a hormone balancing coach. So I cannot wait to share with you all that Corry has to offer, and so that you can get some great insights on how to stay healthy and balanced at any stage in life. So without further ado, Corry, thank you and welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm super excited to be here.
It's awesome to have you. I've been so excited to get you on and share all the information and kind of your story and how you got started and, your passion and purpose, because that's what we're all about here. So why don't you take us a little bit back to when you started your fitness journey?
So that goes all the way back. And it's funny now that I help with the foundation, for the local schools, is because it really started in anatomy. So I think a lot of times people don't really realize the impact that high school can have on kids. But it was an anatomy class, and the teacher's name was Mr. Gigliotti. And it was all about focusing on the body and how the body moves and how it works. And, so just from there, I got so excited about, oh my gosh, you can change the body if you feed it right, or if you exercise it, and the different things that you can do. And so from there, I kind of knew immediately when I went on to school that I wanted to focus on something to do with the body. And I remember my first freshman year, I ended up in biology, chemistry, and calculus, which is kind of like a nightmare for your freshman year. And I think everybody looked at me and go, why are you doing this? And I said, well, this is what I want to do. I want to really focus on everything about the body and how it moves. And I really got into working out and just everything about it. My background was as a dancer throughout high school and everything. And I remember getting into class and I go, but where's the bodies? Like, where's the actual human body? And they said, you're in the wrong major. Like, you need to move. And so I said, okay, whatever that major is, sign me up for that, because that's where I want to go. And so I kind of went in thinking I'd end up being a doctor and helping people that way. But the more I started thinking about it, I was like, I don't know. And so I switched over to exercise physiology, which is the study of how the body moves and functions. And I knew that that was where I wanted to be, because it was the anatomy class with the cadavers. For most people that don't know, that's the actual dead bodies, and doing all the research about learning all of it. And I remember at that point, I was still looking at doing pre-med, but at that point, I actually met my husband of 25 years now in college, and I was taking chemistry. And I remember them saying I needed to get a C or higher in chemistry to go on to organic chemistry. You can't go into med school without organic chemistry. And I got a C minus. And they're like, so you're going to have to redo chemistry. And I said, oh, hell no, we're not redoing chemistry. There's no way. And so I said, what can I still do without, taking organic chemistry? And so that's where it really launched into, I could go into the fitness profession and I could really focus on that. My college also had a program where you could actually do a class in teaching group exercise classes. So that's your traditional aerobics classes. And combining my background with dance and, now I could help people work out. It was just, I was hooked and I loved everything about it. And during that time, I was also introduced into the world of fitness competitions, which fitness competitions, for those that don't know, that's kind of how the female side of bodybuilding got started. And so with that, it was, I could dance, I could lift weights, I could focus on nutrition. And so really quickly started diving into that. And so that was where kind of it all started. And then from there, my husband and I got married. I was still in college and he had just graduated and was going on to the basic school, which is for Marine Corps officers. And we found ourselves over in Japan and Okinawa and just kind of dove right into everything about fitness, nutrition, coaching. And so that was kind of really where it started.
Wow. So at a very young age, you knew what it was that you wanted to do, which is so fortunate, because a lot of us, we go to school thinking that we want to do one thing and then come out of college folks very differently and go down a totally different path. So I love hearing that, because you kind of were driven from a very early age to be passionate about the body and physiology. So that is so, so cool. Okay. So you're in Japan and you've dove headfirst into this career. And then where did that take you?
So, well, in Japan, and it's interesting because, a lot of the things that I do, it was hard because I had a background and a knowledge. So I remember when I got first to Japan and they're like, you need to have these certifications. And I was like, but I have a bachelor's degree in exercise science. And like, what do you mean I have to have certifications? And they're like, no, you have to have certifications. So it's really that learning curve of like, with your career, just because you have a degree in something doesn't necessarily always mean it's going to happen. And so I kind of dove right in. I remember was looking at different jobs and they were like, no, you would basically steal my job for me if like I hired you. And so let's not do that. But so I started teaching exercise classes. I eventually ended up running the group exercise program because I had the background of doing the group exercise program. I knew about it. I had the degree. And in doing so, I had the commander of the Navy hospital reach out and say, I've got pregnant Marines, not spouses of Marines, but I've got pregnant Marines and I need them combat ready again after giving birth. So is this something that your program could tackle? And at that point I had just started my master's degree, and the Marine Corps was actually, as a Marine Corps spouse, they were paying for my master's degree. So I focused on my master's degree in sports medicine. And so I just reached out to the university and I said, look, pregnant women exercising, getting back combat ready, this is like, these are athletes. Like, can I use this as my thesis, and can I work on this with everything that I'm doing with sports medicine? And they said, absolutely. So that was kind of the next launching phase of my career, in the fact that I designed the Marine Corps pre-postnatal program. And it's still in use today. I remember when we moved back from Japan to Virginia, I was like, oh my gosh, that's my program. Like, that's me. And I remember meeting the lady, it was like, that name on there, that's me. I was the one that designed it. And so here I was, I was 22 years old and I had designed the Marine Corps pre-postnatal program. And it kind of set up for kind of hurdles that I would find that a lot of times I think women, and especially, unfortunately, I find women are so cruel to other women sometimes. I know, Jen, you and I as friends, we've talked about, this whole thing, but I found myself, women would look at me and go, well, you've never had a baby. And so how can you be guiding people in pre-postnatal? And I remember looking at him, it was the best thing somebody had ever told me. And I said, well, is your OBGYN a male or a female? And they'd come back and say male. And I'd say, well, he's never had kids either, but you trust him to deliver your baby.
Wow.
And so it just kind of continued on. When we moved back to the States, I started working at Gold's Gym, and then they needed a platform for pre and postnatal. And so I designed Gold's Gym International's pre-postnatal program. So I got to really focus on, and the irony of it is now 20 years later, when we talk about hormones, because pregnancy and postpartum is really all about hormones and balancing all of that. So it really got started there, and I really focused on that. And then, just kept going along the lines, and I still was passionate about bodybuilding. And so I did my first bodybuilding competition in Japan. And then when we came back to the States, I did my bodybuilding competitions and just kept training and going forward with everything. And the great thing is my husband and I were married for 10 years before we ever had kids. And so I said, before we ever have kids, I want to finish my master's in sports medicine. And then the other thing was, I wanted to, if possible, compete at the highest level of bodybuilding, because I was worried about what having kids was going to do to my body. So I said, I don't want to do that. At that point, all my dancing, everything, I had the perfect 6-pack abs. Like, they were perfect abs. Like, they were.
I've seen photos of you online. You look incredible, and I'll try to dig some up and maybe share with our listeners and our audience in the show notes. But honestly, you looked amazing, and you did all of this before kids, and were training women who were postpartum or post pregnancy, and you didn't know what it was like to have a baby, but here you are training these women on how to balance their hormones, which was incredible at such a young age. And what a gift to be able to do that, and then have all that knowledge for when you were pregnant and had your own kids. Yeah. So cool. Okay. So go on.
So, and that just continued on. I mean, I remember working in Gold's Gym when I was there, and I remember showing up with, my background and my degrees. And I remember the person, that interviewed me, and I said, well, and I actually just point blank, I said, how come this other trainer at the gym is making more money than me and is this level 3 trainer and I'm not? And, they looked at me and I said, I have all the same certifications. I have all the same degrees. I said, the only difference between me and her is 15 years. And I said, so I don't understand. And I remember at that point, them, I literally left and went home crying because I was just so frustrated, because it was women that were 15 years older than me just saying, sorry, you're not going to do this. Like, you're too young to do this. And I was like, but it's not fair. And I eventually went over their head and I talked to the owner, and the owner was like, what do you want? And I said, I want to teach group exercise classes. I can help the most amount of people if I teach group exercise classes. And so from there, it just kept pushing forward. And I remember telling my husband, I said, I never want to be in a position where I'm that woman that's 15 years older and not giving the younger population like a way to shine and stand out.
Sure.
And so, even so, then after doing all that, and I worked for Gold's Gym for a long time, and then in 2005, I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I knew at that point I wanted something that was mine. Because at this point, I'd always been working, for a corporation or for a gym or something, and I was like, I want something that's mine. Initially, I had a business partner, and we initially kind of looked at, opening a gym, but the overhead for a gym was just insane. And I was like, that's not really where I want to go. And so I found out about a franchise in nutrition, and that's how I led into nutrition and opening the nutrition stores. And it was really, that was the changing point of, you can work out as hard as you want, but if your nutrition is crap, you're going to have no results. And so I really dove into the nutrition. We owned the nutrition stores for 13 years. The main reason why we closed the nutrition stores is because I moved to California from Virginia, and it just wasn't sustainable. And, I thank God that I closed the last store December of 2019 before the
right before the worldwide pandemic, right?
Yeah.
Where retail was turned upside down. That's a divine intervention right there. Yeah. So before you continue, I just have to ask you, because as you're telling your story, the thing that keeps coming up for me is this drive, right? This desire and this perseverance and this drive, because you haven't even had kids at this point, or maybe by the time you got the stores open, you did, but you were trying to accomplish all of these major things at a very young age. Where do you think you got that drive and that passion from?
I don't know. I mean, I think maybe it was from my parents. I mean, my dad went to the Air Force Academy, and he was a pilot and an instructor. I mean, so it was probably there. But my father passed away when I was really young. So I don't know if there was that. It's interesting because if you look at, both of my brothers, I mean, one of them is a Secret Service agent for the IRS, and the other one, is the vice president of a really prominent bank. And so I think, and my mom raised us as a single mom. So, I mean, she just allowed us to kind of run with that and keep going. I mean, I think there's numerous hurdles that could have made it so that we stopped and just said no, but I guess I just kept going. I just said, I'm just going to keep going, and I'm just going to keep trying and keep seeing. And, it's sad, but, I think also as a blessing, there was no social media when I was doing any of this. It wasn't so easy to compare myself to another coach. It was just, this is what I was doing. This is how I was pushing forward, and this is where I wanted to go. And I think, pursuing my master's and getting my master's degree. And then the biggest one for me, it was really when the world of bodybuilding is fraught with a lot of drugs and steroids and all this kind of stuff. And I remember people saying, you're never going to make it as a professional athlete if you don't do drugs. And I said, watch me. And so, I think that was one of the biggest huge turning points in my life, is when I got that pro card, and I was like, I did this. Like, I made it happen. I did the training. I did the hard work. I mean, I had a coach that, was training me for that knew I wasn't going to touch steroids, that knew I wasn't going to do any of that stuff. But I mean, I made it. And so I had gotten there, and I was like, when I got my pro card back in 2006, that was a big deal. These days, it's a lot easier to get a pro card in the bodybuilding world. But back then, it was really hard. And I really had to work really hard. And so that was one of those first initial things that I was like, okay, I can do this. And I can do, I would say lately, I think my whole motto has been, I can do really hard things. And it's a matter of just going for it and doing it. So
Yes. And I think that's a great message to all the women who are listening, is that I think sometimes we there's so many naysayers out there, and there's so many people. And I think it's a testament to probably your mom and how she raised you, and maybe it's genetics from your dad and this drive, but also your mindset of saying, no, I'm going to do it my way. And being confident enough in saying, I can do this and I can do hard things. And I think I wish that more women got that message. I certainly didn't get that message when I was growing up. And so I had to teach myself that later in life. But for women like you who had that drive from an early age, it's such a gift, because it's like, no, I'm not going to listen to all the naysayers out there. And I think for women nowadays, there's so many people, like you said, on social media, or we have images all over the place telling us who we are and what we're supposed to be and what we're supposed to look like. And it's a tough thing to be able to do, but to have that confidence and say, no, I can do this. I'm going to focus on my path no matter what anybody says, and I'm going to move forward, and I can do hard things. And as long as you have that mindset, you can do anything you set your mind to. Right. And you may, sure, you're going to have hurdles and you're going to have speed bumps and even roadblocks, but you'll find the way to get around it if you persist. And you're such a great example of that. So I'm so grateful to have you on and telling the story. So let's go back and take us from where you were. You moved to California. You had to close your nutrition stores just prior to the pandemic. And then what kind of set you up for this next phase?
Well, so, living in Virginia, so California was a dream of my husband's. He grew up in California. He wanted to move back to California. Like, this is where he wanted to be. This is where he wanted to raise his kids. All of his family was here. And I remember I was like, okay, finally, okay, fine. We'll do it. We'll go for it. We'll move to California. We'll move cross country and we'll make it happen. And so we moved here, and I was so incredibly depressed. I was so depressed for 2 years. Like, I remember my 40th birthday gift to myself was actually going on antidepressants and anxiety medicine, because I had left everything. And so, I came here, and my husband, of course, immediately had a job to jump into. My kids had schools to jump into. And, we came from a really small kind of private school. So there was that really amazing family community feel to, big giant public elementary school. And when I came in, there was an individual that was basically, she was fitness and nutrition in this area. It was her, and everybody knew she did it all. So me coming in was really kind of hard to kind of break in. And then I was trying to figure out, like, the gyms weren't like the gyms where they were back in Virginia. It was more upscale, country clubbish kind of thing. And so nothing was kind of there. And what I didn't realize, and I now looking back, kind of hindsight know, is that, and my mom had later, as I started talking to her about this, I had hit perimenopause early. So I kind of hit that 37, 38. And, the initial things for most women is anxiety and depression. That's usually one of the very first things they put women as their hormones start to change, is on those medicines. But I remember I came here, when we moved here, I was 20 pounds overweight, because there was just a lot of stress and a lot of things going on. At that point, the stores were not doing well because I had moved here. And then, of course, anyone that's ever had employees knows that employees can drive you absolutely. And I know, Jen, you know this.
Yes, all too well.
The best and the worst part of owning a business, because you rely on them to kind of keep things going. So when I had moved here, the store stayed open. We moved here in 2017. The store stayed open until 2019. So there was so much stress on my plate, and I was trying to balance everything, trying to figure out, how do I work out, and how do I get to, doing this? And I was like, I don't know what's going on. And I remember one of the very first experiences is that we went to the beach, and there was all these people, and and I know, Jen, you've heard this story, but I'm gonna tell this story so people understand it, because it's really what sets up my passion now as to why I will never back down on what I do. And we went, and it was, this group of people from the elementary school that they kind of invited us, and, this other person was there. And so we all went to the beach, and my girls were out playing in the water, and we came from Virginia, so not necessarily where you'd be swimming. And my youngest started struggling really bad. She was, you could tell, I mean, she was practically, she hates when I tell this story, but she was basically drowning. Like she could not keep her head up over water. Like the waves were pulling her down. And I remember I was so embarrassed because I was going to have to take off the cover up I was wearing and go get in the ocean. And everyone knew, like, my whole background for 20 years was fitness and nutrition. And here I was going to have to basically expose myself as being overweight, being a nutritionist that is fat. I mean, all the horrible things I told myself. And I was like, okay, this is what I'm going to do because I'm going to save my kid. I don't know why I thought I had to take the cover up. I don't know why I couldn't just jump into the ocean, but hindsight, everything was fine. There was a kid that swooped in, picked her up and brought her back. And, and the mom came over and she goes, yeah, he just graduated from junior lifeguards. So my kids now at this time, we've lived here in California for 7 years. They've now gone through junior lifeguards twice. It's the best thing ever. The ocean terrifies me to begin with. So that combined with, then I listened to a podcast with Mel Robbins, and she was actually interviewing a health coach. And this health coach was talking about, she sells keto supplements for helping people lose weight. And Mel Robbins goes, but let me get this, but you're overweight. So you're selling these products, telling everybody to buy this, but you're overweight. She's like, you're a hypocrite. And I swore that conversation was talking to me. So it was, 2017, we went to the ocean right when we moved here. 2017, it was out when I was in Virginia visiting for a bodybuilding show in November. And it was like just this flood of everything hit me. And then, come 2018, February, I turned 40. And I remember going to the doctor and I say, what the hell is wrong with me? Like, this is what's going on. Like, something has to be wrong. And they ran, and every single woman that's, in their 40s and beyond will totally get this. You go to the doctor and you're like, what's wrong with me? And they look at you and they go, everything's normal. You're just getting older. And at that point I was like, no, this isn't.
Or all your blood work is fine. It's showing up fine. There's nothing going on. Go home and, put a fan on or whatever.
They're going saying, but what is going on? I said, I don't understand. And so at that moment, that's when I said, I'll take anxiety and depression medicine, because I said, I'm at the point literally where it's, because I was overweight and because I was there, I don't shy away from the fact of telling people that I was really struggling with depression. I went through really bad postpartum depression with my kids, to the point that I remember I was dealing with the nutrition stores that were, the ups and downs of owning a business. I remember looking at my husband. I was sitting on the floor of our shower and I said, maybe we should just put our kid up for adoption, because I'm never going to spend any time with it because I'm so busy working. So it had been a history of depression and anxiety. And I was like, I've got to get help. And then from that point, I was like, okay, there's got to be something different, because everything at that point, the eat less, move more, everything I had ever done with any of my clients wasn't working. And I was like, I know the science, I know the nutrition. I said, so why the hell is nothing working? And that's when I said, okay, I basically am going to put myself back through school. At that point, I'm 40, my business partner's 45. And, she was like, she called me up and she's like, we got to do something. And she basically said, I've got this program, this OBGYN kind of does this detox. And she's like, let's do this. And she's like, I'm thinking we could do it. And I looked at it, I go, I have to give up coffee for 11 days. There's no way in hell. And she goes, hey, I'm giving up alcohol for 21 days. So yes, we can do this. Wow. And so that was the start of all of it. And,
and really quick, before you go on with this, I just want to speak to our listeners for a second, because I cannot tell you, and I think you and I both know where we are in our lives, the stage of our lives, in our community, all over the country. Women are going through this every single day. And it is something that for a long time just wasn't spoke of. You just dealt with it, right? Or you got put on these hormone supplements or medication, and you just dealt with it until you got through it. And perimenopause sometimes can last 10 years. And, and then you're in menopause after that. And so you're talking, a 15-year period of your entire life where you just feel awful. And it is a horrible, horrible thing. And what you're doing and what you've chosen to do with all of your breadth of knowledge and nutrition and everything is really a gift to all of us women who are struggling with this. And maybe our traditional Western medicine doctors just don't have the education on this stuff. So I just want to say thank you to you for teaching all of us. And for those of you listening, tune in and do not check out right now, because she's about to share some really good stuff about what she's learned and maybe what you're going through right now. So I just had to add that. So go on, Corry, tell us what you learned.
So, and the biggest thing is what I was hearing from people. So I started seeing clients that I had trained when I was in my late 20s for bodybuilding shows reaching out and saying, hey, I'm starting to experience some of these, I think they're hormone issues. Like, is this something you work on? And I knew for myself I had to do stuff. And so, I'll give you a few tips in just a minute, but I spent a year diving into everything, figuring it out, doing everything I could. I went back to my doctor a year later. So a year later, I went back for my annual exam and I walked in, and so she looks at me and she's like, what did you do? And here's the kicker. She ran my hormone panel again, and guess what? It was normal. It was still normal. And I had lost 25 pounds of body fat. My blood pressure was better. My sugar level was better. My hormone levels were better. But the problem is that average is like this gigantic range. And if you are at the bottom of average, they're not going to put you on thyroid medicine. They're not going to give you any kind of hormone, anything with your hormones. But it's only if you're outside of that. And so that's really the problem. And so what I focused on was solely nutrition because there were no hormones. And that's where I started finding the tie between the hormonal balances and what had happened. And so
and I think it's important to point out here that I love what you just said about this normal range, because we talk about this a lot in a lot of different aspects of health. Normal in the medical world has this huge range, right? Where as long as you're able to get up out of bed and walk across the house and, take care of yourself, that's normal. When really you're really unhealthy if you're not walking every day, getting exercise at a certain weight. People don't want to hear that, but even 10 pounds overweight is overweight. And I think you're not healthy at that point. And so I think it's really important for people to get real with themselves. Treat the symptom, not the blood work, right? Your symptoms are, if you're not feeling right, there's something going on, even if your doctor says you're fine. So that's the real, I think, the thing that people need to focus on. You're not crazy. If you feel like you're having hot flashes and you're, not able to just feel like you can get up and have a good day because you're exhausted all the time, there's something going on, even if your blood work says you're normal. So I think this is where I want people to really pay attention.
Well, and I think one of the things that I always tell people on the program that they start with me, it's like, first understand your own bullshit and then stop tolerating it. So it's understanding the excuses. And this gets to the ultimate passion of why I do this. So many women, when they call me and they talk to me, they say, and this goes back to my deep why. At that moment with my kid in the ocean, I said, I am never, ever going to let my weight be any reason why I don't live life. So many women contact me and they say, they're not in pictures with their kids because they're so embarrassed by their weight, or they won't step up in front of their, colleagues or anything to give a presentation at work and showcase their brilliance because they're so afraid that people are going to be focusing on the fact that they've gained 20 pounds, or God forbid they have a hot flash standing in front of everybody. And so, and I have goosebumps saying this because it breaks my heart when I hear women say this, because I don't ever want a woman, it deals with weight, but there's all the other things, because the number one thing that usually happens to most women when they hit perimenopause is they gain weight.
Right.
And that's because the hormones start to shift. And I'll explain it in just a second at a very high level so you understand why that is. But I can't sit by and let that happen to women. And so knowing what I know now, I have to educate women on, it's not the end. Like, 2 months ago from this date, I actually went into my OBGYN. I said, can you please run my numbers again? They're like, you're 46. I'm like, I promise you, I'm postmenopause. And they're like, you're 46. I said, just run my numbers. Came back, I'm completely 100% postmenopause. So I'm done. And I'm here to tell you, when you get to that other side, if you take care of your other hormones, so I'm going to talk about those in a second, your cortisol, your thyroid, and your insulin, it is like, oh my gosh, it's the best thing ever. It's like, life is grand again, because it's really when your hormones are doing this, it is, and they are going up and down and up and down and up and down. That's when everything is crazy.
Right.
And that's
when you can feel it in your body. You can feel it. Some women actually can feel, in that moment, the heat in their body come up from inside of them, or they start to feel anxious, or they start to get that brain fog or whatever. It's a physical reaction. And in that moment, and it's going on. And so no matter what your blood work is saying, you can feel it. And so those are the things to pay attention to, and then call Corry and find out what's going on with your body. So
people think they're crazy. They think
right.
they're literally going, they're like, and so when I tell them, no, your hormones are off balance, they're like, okay, oh my God, I'm not going crazy.
Right. And it's like this relief. It's a peace of mind thing. So, okay. So tell us a little bit more about those hormones. Give like maybe just a couple of tips of advice for women who maybe are feeling like they're starting to have this issue. And we're going to have all the ways to contact Corry in the show notes, how to reach out to her and find out more information. If you're feeling this, if your doctor's telling you you're normal, but you know that you're not, and you feel like you're going crazy, what can they do?
Well, and I will tell everyone, this works for anyone. This works for, it works for your teenagers. Mm-hmm. It can work for your teenagers. I have 2 teenagers. And so this is just talking about hormones in general. But what happens is as our progesterone and our estrogen, so those are your sex hormones for everyone kind of listening in. And I do have a YouTube video that just kind of explains what a hormone is, because sometimes people like hormones go right over their head. But it's like the fundamental hormones make everything in your body move. And everything in your body is responsible based on the actions of hormones. So for females, if we talk about females here, progesterone and estrogen are your sex hormones. They go up and down. A lot of people explain menopause as basically the reverse of puberty. So if you think about puberty, if you've got teen daughters, think about the craziness of puberty. So menopause is kind of the reverse of that. But what happens, and this is specifically where I focus on, is when estrogen and progesterone start to go crazy and do different things, you have 3 other main hormones that they are directly influenced by your sex hormones. So the first one is thyroid imbalances. So most common things, if your thyroid is off, if you are sluggish, if you're tired, if you're losing weight, if you're losing hair and you feel like I cannot gain weight, my thyroid must be off. Thyroids are usually off when you go postpartum. Usually, the change in those hormones throws off your thyroid. The second one is insulin. Everybody has heard about insulin. If you've heard anything about intermittent fasting or keto, insulin resistance, so how your body processes carbs in your body and sugars in your body, is really tied to estrogen and progesterone. So when your estrogen, as we talk about perimenopause for a second, the first thing that happens is your progesterone, which is your calming hormone, starts to drop. Your estrogen goes up. When your estrogen goes up, your ability to digest carbohydrates and sugar goes crazy.
Okay.
So there's those 2. Then the next one is your cortisol levels. If anybody's ever heard about cortisol, what you've probably heard is it's your stress hormone.
Yes.
So think about women that are in their 40s and their 50s when this usually starts changing. They're probably really into their career. They're not just at a basic level, entry level. They've got a really well-established career. They're CEOs, COOs. They're in a big level. Those come with high levels of stress. Throw in, most of these individuals also have kids that are in middle school and high school. Or maybe they have new adult children that are navigating college, or, oh my gosh, they're really going to marry that person and I can't believe they're doing this to their lives. So you've got stress. Again, if your estrogen is going higher, it can directly affect your cortisol levels. So when I primarily work with individuals, I am looking at insulin, cortisol, and thyroid, because I can send you to a doctor to adjust your progesterone and estrogen. Do you need them to survive menopause? No, I'm allergic to every single one of the hormones they've ever tried. So you can do it naturally, but you can also go to your doctor to get help. There's varying degrees of what you want to do based on symptoms. There's like 100 different symptoms that you can feel. But the basic rules that I always give people, so there's 3 simple things that I tell everybody if you're starting to go with this that will make a huge difference. Number 1, you have to move your body. You have to keep moving. Now, if you feel like you're going crazy with your hormones, please don't go do HIIT. Don't throw yourself into a super grueling workout. All I want you to do is walk. Get out there and walk. If you're walking, you're moving your body. Also, listen to a podcast, listen to music that you like, listen to nothing. And it's basically because that walking is going to help to reduce your cortisol levels. If you can do it in the bright sunshine first thing in the morning, it's going to help everything move in your body and it's going to help reset that cortisol. Plus, walking is the best exercising for warding off any kind of chronic disease. And if you're not walking right now, that's okay. Start walking 10 minutes a day.
Yeah, this is so key, because I will say it's totally different like when we were in our 20s and 30s and even our early 40s. When you're walking, you're doing tons of cardio and you think that all you have to do is like burn, baby, burn in order to lose weight. That totally changes in perimenopause. You no longer, it's actually the adverse effect. When you're doing that much cardio, you're increasing your cortisol levels, as you said, because you're putting your body into a stress state, and then it's holding on to all of that stuff. So It's actually the opposite. And I think that was the first thing that I learned was it's that typical thing. We all say we're doing all this cardio and nothing's working. We're eating we do all the things that we used to do in our 20s and 30s and nothing is working. The game has changed, ladies, and it's literally the reverse. So now walking, things that didn't used to work before, I would just say call Corry, because that's at the end of the day, the best answer that I can give you. But walking, decreasing your sugar, like you're saying, and paying attention to the times of day that you're eating, those simple tips are so important. So any final ideas on things that ladies can do just as they're starting to notice their hormones changing?
Well, let me give you 2 and 3. Those 2 and 3 tips.
Oh, yeah.
You commented them because you know all my stuff.
Yep. Sorry. I'm like, yes, I keep jumping in. Yes, I did that. Yes, I listened to you. Okay.
I just don't want anybody to be like, wait, Jen, she said she was going to give 3 tips. And
I introduced and I interrupted you. So keep going.
No, you're fine. So the number 2 is the sugar. It's really got to reduce your sugar. And I always tell women it's less than 20 grams of added sugar a day. I promise you, I give you so many free resources on how to do this. If you are suffering from hot flashes and if you're waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, bright-eyed and going, oh my God, I can't go back to sleep, it is your sugar. You have got to reduce your sugar. Now, note what I did not say. I did not say you have to cut out your carbs. I didn't say you had to do intermittent fasting. I didn't say you had to do keto. You just have to reduce your carbs in forms of sugar. That's it. Reduce that sugar. Not necessarily carbs, but reduce sugar. I'm actually the one, if you watch my social media, I'm the one that's going to be telling you to eat carbs at dinner time. So most people are like, carbs at dinner? This is like welcome news to a lot of my friends who love to eat their carbs at dinner time because it makes them feel satisfied. Yeah, well, and let's face it, you're usually making dinner for a family. So the last thing you want to do is say, here's this lovely dinner and I'm going to eat this. I never have my clients make 2 meals. Whatever your family is eating, you're eating. So let's face it, your whole family gets healthier. And then number 3 is get rid of your processed carbohydrates. So stop eating the processed. Don't eat carbohydrates out of boxes. You need to have sweet potatoes, beans, legumes, lentils. You can do pastas made from, lentil pasta or chickpea pasta, but just really focus on good carbohydrates. Don't eat crap carbohydrates. So those are those 3. Move your body with walking, reduce sugar under 20 grams of added sugar a day, and then drop the processed carbs.
Okay, so do those 3 things and it should make you feel a whole lot better. Mm-hmm. And if not, you can always reach out to Corry and learn more about how to get your hormones in check, because it is a game changer once you do. It really is. And for some women, it's more extreme than others. And I think that it's all you are the only one that knows your body, and you are the one that can, check in with yourself and say, is this something that I can manage or do I need more help? And if your doctor's not giving you the answers, then everything that you've heard today, Corry is an expert when it comes to physiology, the body, fitness, training, nutrition. So we are so fortunate to have you in our community. And for anyone who wants to reach out to you that isn't local, they can do that online. And there's a million different ways to get in touch with you, Corry. I am just so grateful that you were able to come on the show today and share all of this information with us. And you certainly have turned your passion into your purpose. And you are continuing to do so, raising teenage daughters, helping our community, supporting our community in so many different ways. We're so grateful to you. And I just want to thank you so much for your time.
Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. We'll talk soon. I'm sure we'll continue this conversation as we move forward. Take care. Thank you again for listening to Where Passion Meets Purpose. If you're enjoying this show, please subscribe and download it so you don't miss an episode every single week. And if you think you have a friend who might benefit from listening, please share it with them as well. If you'd like to contact me, you can always reach me through email on my website at jenmentasana.com and my social media, Jen_Mentasana. And you can DM me there and I'll always respond, and we can connect about topics on the show or anything else you'd like to discuss. Thanks again for tuning in.